Dr. Shabir, welcome to Let the Quran Speak.
My pleasure to be on.
We are talking about abortion and what the Islamic perspective is on it. And Dr. Shabir, we've talked about what scholars have said at length, but now the question is, well, what are they referring to? Like, what does the Quran say about abortion? So we want to go back to the sources, look at the Quran, then in another segment we want to look at the Hadith. But for now, let's look at the Quran and see, does the Quran make any reference to abortion?
The Quran doesn't say specifically anything about abortion, but there are verses from the Quran which normally are drawn into this discussion. So one verse speaks very generally, لا تقتلوا النفس التي حرم الله إلا بالحق. Do not kill the soul which God has sanctified, except in the pursuit of justice. That's in the 17th chapter of the Quran. I believe that's the 33rd verse. So that's very, very general. Now, if the question then is, when does the soul get blown into the fetus? Because then for traditional discussions, that would be the cutoff point at which time, if you kill the soul, you are really killing a soul. I mean, if you kill if you abort the baby, you are killing a soul. Mm-hmm. But there is a time prior to the soul being blown in which case aborting the baby could not really be called killing a soul, except maybe as a potential soul, or the body as a vehicle for the eventual reception of the soul.
Mm-hmm. There's an exception built into that verse, though, right?
Except in the pursuit of justice. So, if you think about killing a live person, and we think of the application of capital punishment, especially in a life-for-life type of capital punishment, then Islamic law traditionally has allowed for that. So the verse then is giving the exception for that apparent purpose, that you couldn't just take a person and kill that person, but if you are executing that person for a capital crime, then this would have been allowed in traditional Islamic terms. Mm-hmm. So that's that one verse. Now, there are two verses of the Quran, one in the 6th chapter of the Quran, and the one is the 151st verse. And then also in the 17th chapter of the Quran, just two verses before the one we have just mentioned. So that's the 17th chapter, verse number 31. Both of them basically say that you're not to kill your children, with slightly different wordings. So the chapter 6 verse says, do not kill your children min imlaq, out of poverty. La taqtulu awladakum min imlaq. Do not kill your children due to poverty. And then God assures you that God provides for you and for them, meaning for your potential children. And then Surah 17 says almost something very similar. La taqtulu awladakum khashyata imlaq.
Out of fear.
Do not kill your children out of fear of poverty. You got it right. Out of fear of poverty. So the commentators say this may be a case where a person is not necessarily poor at the moment, but is afraid that if we have more children, then, who's going to feed? We're going to have one more mouth to feed. So where's that provision going to come from? And the Muslim belief naturally is that God is the one who provides for us, and hence the assurance in that verse as well. And نَحْنُ نَرْزُقُهُمْ وَإِيَّاكُمْ. We provide for them and for you. It's interesting that the commentators pay attention to the difference in wording and the different meanings that could be applicable due to the difference of wording. So in the first case, the poverty is real. And they say that God assures the listeners that God is providing for the people already on the ground, and secondarily for the newcomers. Whereas the verse that talks about the fear of poverty may indicate that the person has this fear about the future, but at the moment they're doing okay. So in that case, God is assuring them that God provides for the potential newborns, and also for them, because the also for them is secondary. They already know that. So God mentions first the provision for the newborns. But this interesting nuance aside, we can see that from these three verses we've mentioned so far, there's nothing specific about abortion itself. It's about killing your children.
And it's not clear. I mean, it doesn't seem obvious to me that children would be the same as an unborn fetus, right?
Yes, and it was not so obvious even to the commentators and so on. So they
But I
did
see
not.
a lot of scholars today referring to those verses in
Yes.
their arguments about abortion.
Yes, yes. But in the classical discussions of abortion, I don't see that these verses are brought in, because if you bring in these verses, then you would want to perhaps decide against abortion from the start. But as we've already explained, classical Muslim jurists have allowed to certain varying degrees for the abortion without thinking that this is actually killing a soul. But they do say that after 120 days of pregnancy, then this does become a soul, and then there are penalties for aborting this child, as if you're killing a live person, but less. So a penalty for killing a woman would have been 50 camels, and then they say 1/10 of that is the penalty for causing her to abort her fetus. So 5 camels, the value of 5 camels. So definitely there's a penalty, but you can see that they're not considered this to be a full-fledged human being. Otherwise, the penalty would be same as the penalty for the mother, at least.
There are also some hadith, some verses about killing your daughters, right? Because I believe this was a common practice at the time of the Prophet Muhammad.
Yes. So apparently what the Quran is addressing there is that people would have the live births, and then they discover it's a female child, and to them this is quite a disadvantage, and they prefer to bury the daughters alive rather than face consequences that could accrue later on in life, either for the child or for the family or both. And another verse of the Quran says, وَإِذَا الْمَوْءُودَةُ سُئِلَتْ بِأَيِّ ذَنبٍ قُتِلَتْ. When this buried daughter is going to be asked on the Day of Judgment, for what crime have you been killed? As part of that drama, to condemn the parents who have gone to this extent of killing their daughters. So these are about the live births. But one might want to say that by some extension, we can consider that the child in the womb, though not a full-fledged born baby, nonetheless is already on the way there, and it's nothing. It's not nothing. And it's not exactly like the killing of the newborn, but it is not nothing either. So it's somewhere in between. And obviously, the more developed the fetus, the more severe would be the crime. Although the stipulated penalties have remained the same for 121 days all the way up to the time just preceding delivery. And this is why in my later explanations, as we discuss this topic, I tend to give precedence to a graduated type of view regarding this. It's not like a definite cutoff at 120 days and then everything after that is of the same category. But naturally, there is the closer to delivery, the more severe the crime. If this baby is to be aborted, or worse yet, killed either through accidental manslaughter or by deliberate murder.
So abortion in the Quran is not really that clear. It's not mentioned very much. It seems more like it's mentioning what happens after you give birth, right? And
Yes.
and I guess we see more of mention of abortion in the hadith.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, and
Not necessarily mention of abortion, but mention of a soul and that sort of stuff.
that's right. That's
yes.
right. So to be clear, the Quran mentions the soul, but does not mention when the soul is breathed into the body of the fetus.
All right, so next time we will look at the hadith then.
Sure. Support us today and help us share the message of Islam with people across the globe. Thank you, and may God bless you and your loved ones with the very best always.